Hello, public opinion aficionados, and welcome to Rasmussen Reports. And what a wild 4th of July weekend. Major news breaking, not one, but two incredible things. We're going to talk about one of them right now. Elon Musk's wild new idea to change the direction of the country, the America Party. And we're going to get into that, but I think it's quite frankly just absolutely terrible idea. But we'll go into the details of why I think that's the case. And you're going to have to hold off for the Epstein stuff. We're going to talk about that a little later. But it's not a good look for the Trump administration. I can tell you that right now. So here is Elon Musk with yet another Twitter poll. And no, these are not actually polls. They're not scientifically conducted. He's not targeting people. There's no demographic weighting. He knows absolutely nothing about these people. Some of these people could be bots. Many of them could be foreign. There's a big global user base for Twitter. Who the hell knows who they are at all? But Elon Musk is using it to make decisions about the direction of the country. Not that great. But here's this post. Independence Day is the perfect time to ask if you want independence from the two-party, or some would say uniparty, and I would agree, system. Should we create the America Party? And out of 1.2 million people, again, we know absolutely nothing about who these people are. What they are is pretty much a random sample of Elon Musk followers because he's got like 200 million followers. 65% say yes, 35% say no. He goes on to say one way to execute on this would be to laser focus on just 2 or 3 Senate seats and 8 to 10 House districts. Given the razor thin legislative margins, that would be enough to serve as the deciding vote on contentious laws, ensuring that they serve the true will of the people. Well, there are already people on the margins who are the deciding votes. I don't know if they need to be a different party, quite frankly. But again, we'll get into this. But I do agree with him on this. Our debt is unsustainable. Of course, people have been calling our suspending unsustainable for a very long time. And quite frankly, they've been wrong because, quite frankly, long term yields aren't really that crazy high yet. The America Party is needed to fight the Republican Democrat uniparty. I agree there's a uniparty. I agree there's problems. We've talked about it. But this is about how. How do you fix it? Elon Musk is going to apparently commit $1 billion to this, a lot of capital. That's one of the things I've heard. I haven't seen it cited. You can do a lot with that money. Debt has consistently risen regardless of which party is in power. And that is true. Of course, there are some things like Chinese bioweapons and international invasions of Middle Eastern countries and things that are outside of people's control for sure, bipartisan spending legislation that really didn't have much to do with the president in power. There's a lot of stuff here. But the problem is, yes, the government has continued to spend, and maybe we will grow ourselves out of it. That is one of our options, or maybe we will just decline in a inflationary death spiral. That's possible as well. But he seems to really be fixed on this, and I guess he's looking out for his equity ownership. But here's Trump's response. He was not that happy when Elon Musk spent the entire weekend talking about the future of his American party. From Sean Fresh, Trump dropped a truth nuke on Elon Musk. Agree. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I am saddened to watch Elon Musk go completely off the rails, essentially becoming a train wreck over the past 5 weeks. He even wants to start a third political party, despite the fact that they have never succeeded in the United States. That's true. And he really did go off the rails 5 or 6 weeks ago. I think it really happened when Elon Musk, I think himself, was baited and switched. He came in strong thinking that Donald Trump's Republican Party was going to be aggressive at cutting. And then Congress just went and did whatever the heck it wanted, extending the debt ceiling, going on into this big, beautiful bill, not really including Doge in any way, as far as I'm concerned. The system seems not designed for third parties. The one thing third parties are good for is the creation of complete and total disruption and chaos. He's true. It's almost impossible to predict how this would go. And we have enough of that with the radical left Democrats who have lost their confidence and their minds. Republicans, on the other hand, are a smooth running machine. I don't know about that. That just passed the biggest bill of its kind in the history of our country. So he's trying to tout the success of the one big beautiful bill. It is a great bill. Unfortunately for Elon, it eliminates the ridiculous electric vehicle mandate, low blow, which would have forced everyone to buy an electric car in a short period of time. I've been strongly opposed to that from the very beginning. People are now allowed to buy whatever they want, gasoline powered, hybrids, which are doing very well, or new technologies as they come about. No more EV mandate. I have campaigned on this for 2 years, and quite honestly, when Elon gave me his total and unquestioned endorsement, I asked him whether or not he knew that I was going to terminate the EV mandate. It was in every speech I made. Oof. And in every conversation I had, he said he had no problems with that. I was very surprised. Additionally, Elon asked that one of his close friends run NASA. And while I thought his friend was very good, I was surprised to learn that he was a blue blooded Democrat who had never contributed to a Republican before. Hmm. Well, never contributed to a Republican before. Elon probably was also. I also thought it inappropriate that a very close friend of Elon, who was in the space business, true, that doesn't look good, ran NASA when NASA is such a big part of Elon's corporate life. My number one charge is to protect the American public. And so I think he has the right intentions here. And he definitely took some very clear swipes at Elon. But what this is about is that third party, which, quite frankly, like Trump says, I think has no chance of success and only can seek to disrupt things. Here's what I said a few weeks ago when people were first kicking this idea around. Someone who thinks there's a middle 80%, that's something that Elon says, is not politically astute enough to launch a third party. There is not a middle 80%. First off, that implies that there are 10% of super radical people and 10% of super conservative people, and that is not the case. I don't think there's a very large percent of super conservative people, period. I think there's about a 30, 35, 40% of solidly conservative people, just like I think that there are a 35, 40, 45% group of solid screaming leftists on top of some normies that will just vote along with them as a block anyways. If anything, like Vish Burra says, the middle is between 6 to 12%. Those are the fluff, the normies, the floaters, the politically disconnected, the people who have, quite frankly, in increasing numbers, started to vote, giving Donald Trump increasing shares of the electorate. But that's who you're fighting over because people are committed to their party. It's like saying, I think the Yankees and the Mets are just not good enough for New York. Let's just come up with a third team, and all of the disaffected fans will immediately come over and watch our. It doesn't work like that. That's not how reality works. Not only that, I mean, this is one of the first real major problems with this. What's its platform going to be? And I guarantee you that this is not going to be popular. America's party will be focused on reduced debt, responsible spending only. Okay. That might also be called by some austerity. People do want reduced spending, but if you're going to make this the platform of your party, people are going to say that you're going to cut grandma's Medicaid. That's just how it's going to go. Modernize military with AI robotics. Okay. Maybe that's spending, maybe not. I mean, there's an aspect of probably having to uncover waste and fraud here. Pro tech, accelerate to win an AI. To me, that says the tech people get whatever they want. Kind of like the way that Elon was talking about H-1Bs back in December. Starting to feel a little bit of a more open borders tinge here. And yes, Elon has come out against illegal immigration, but he wants to reform the legal immigration system so that we can take in a bounty of more people. And I don't know how you make sure all of those people that are pouring in are fit to be the next incremental citizen to the United States. Because at the numbers we're at now, we are not very good at it. And I can tell you that the people do not want increased immigration. It is not popular. Numbers like in the 20s. less regulation across the board, but especially in energy. And I wonder about this. I think less regulation is good, but I think some regulation is important. But you have to understand the source. A very pro business third party here calling for less regulation. Again, we're starting to get into the realm of conflicting interests. Free speech, okay. Pro natalist. So you see, Elon Musk is continuously focused on preventing deflation, which, quite frankly, for a lot of people in the country is a good thing. He wants people to just keep cranking out babies. But we've been talking about the mental health in America. We've been talking about the state of men and women, situation with dating apps and declining families and religion that's just becoming less and less of an impact on our society. I don't know if we're the right society to be cranking out babies right now. I just don't. I think we need to get our crap in order first. Centrist policies everywhere else. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense at all. There really is not a centrist policy. What's your centrist policy? Are you pro amnesty or are you pro massive deportation? What's the centrist policy? We're going to make a deal? Well, that's where the uniparty screws you. That's the thing. There's no like self-awareness here at all. And that's kind of cringy too. Ugh. So I don't think the party's going to stand for very popular things. Quite frankly, it seems like a mess. There just aren't that many sort of like tech bro, pro billionaire people that want this nice, perfect libertarian mix that are going to flock from the Democrat and Republican Party to find a new home there. But let's look at some polling why this never works out. Because people might say, well, third parties are great. We need them. They're only getting more popular. They certainly aren't. I picked some numbers back from April of 2016, kind of earlier in the 2016 race, to show you that back then, there wasn't a lot of love for these candidates. People weren't completely sold on Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump for different reasons. And both of them were below 40%. This is kind of where JD Vance and the people he's running against are at now. Third parties were polling pretty high. 16% said they'd vote for some other candidate. 6% said stay home. 2% not sure. That's 16%. That's a really high number. Really high. And it even kind of held up a little bit, but most of it went away, quite frankly. Here is November, final poll of 2016. Hillary Clinton at 45%, Trump at 43%, Johnson at 4%, the Libertarian, Jill Stein at 2%, some other candidate 3%. So in the polling, we're almost at 10%, 16% to almost 10%. Although the problem is when it came time to pull the lever, people just didn't have the same level of conviction for their third party. Gary Johnson only got 3.3%, Jill Stein 1%, half of where she was polling. McMuffin got 0.5%. We're basically under 5% here, down from 10, down from 16, really. But then there's this cycle, and here's RFK going back to June of 23. And so at this point in time, Trump was on the path, on the glide path to winning the GOP nomination, but he was also being indicted. And so a lot of people were like, nah, you can't possibly be the candidate. They were wrong. Impression of RFK, pretty good, 49% favorable, only 38% unfavorable. How likely is it that RFK Jr. will end up being the Democrat presidential nominee in 2024? And only 31% said likely, 9% very. But among Democrats, the likely number was actually 35%. It's a pretty decent chunk of Democrats at the time. 55% said it was not likely, but only 31% of Democrats said that RFK Jr.'s nomination was not at all likely. And then here's a pretty important matchup we did. This is back in December of 2023. It represents the high point of RFK Jr.'s support. If the 2024 candidates for president were Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and RFK Jr., who would you vote for? And so Trump is the candidate. It looks like Biden's running. RFK's been on the national scene for a while now, months, and he got 16%. Not bad. 16% of the electorate, with Joe Biden only polling 32%. Now, I think it had a little bit more to say about Joe Biden than RFK Jr., but he was getting 16% of the Democrat vote to only 58% of Joe Biden getting the Democrat vote. Donald Trump was getting 16% of the Democrat vote too. People were not happy with Joe Biden, but he was getting 12% of the Republican vote and 21% of the independent vote too. So a pretty good showing. The problem is that did really not hold up. Obviously, a lot of Republicans piled in behind Trump. A lot of them were put off by some of RFK Jr.'s more left-leaning ideas. But here we are, and this is from August 1st through the 7th. Not the last time we polled, but pretty close. I think he dropped out one more poll after this. But here's the multi-way matchup. Trump wins 49 to 44. This is really right after Kamala Harris had been anointed. RFK Jr. was down to 3% from 16. 3%, not 10% like in 2016, 3%. So the political context here is that even though people say, oh, we're not too happy with Donald Trump or Kamala Harris as our candidates, they really were because they piled in behind them. And that's the issue, is that we are basically in political Armageddon. There's no room in the political context for people to have the ability to, quite frankly, play footsie with a third party. This was an existential election, and this is one of the things that I would use as evidence. Joe Biden really screwed up America and changed. And so third parties are much less viable than they were just 8 years ago. And here's the Democrat numbers. RFK Jr. was from 16% down to 2% of the Democrat electorate. He went from 12% among Republicans down to 2%. And it was 21% of independents. He lost all these independents. Look at how many independents say they were voting for Trump here, 48%. RFK Jr. went from 21 to just 6. And he's about as independent as you can get. And so again, when even the independents are breaking hard right or left, and the 2024 election outcome was even worse for third parties. We went from what, 5% combined 2016 major third party candidates to under 2%. This is like 1.5 points across Jill Stein, RFK Jr. He withdrew, but people still voted for him. And Chase Oliver, who is like the least viable libertarian candidate ever. So again, not a good showing, not a good direction for these niche little third parties that have their sort of pet issues and get steamrolled more and more, time and time again. And I don't think Elon's even thought through how this is going to play out at a local level. The Republican Party has so much money, so many volunteers, all of this power to just throw at these candidates. I know Elon thinks he's going to wield a lot of money, but quite frankly, the Democrats are not very good at exploring other options. It's going to split the Republican vote. It's going to increase the number of Democrats that get elected locally. It's going to make it harder for Republicans to have a majority in the Congress and the Senate. And guess what happens when they get a majority in the Senate? Probably the nuclear option gets used. And at some point, a Democrat president is going to be in the White House. And when the Democrats have all three branches of the government and they don't have a filibuster anymore, then you're going to see everything. Then there's this. It's something Elon agreed with. The people saying Elon should just work on making the Republican Party better are the same ones who've been calling to primary the few Republicans who want a smaller government. And I guess that's kind of true. You see a lot of people yelling at Massey out there. But quite frankly, people have been calling to primary a heck of a lot more than just Thomas Massey. A lot of people have been begging Republicans to get primaried, and they just kind of haven't. Now, quite frankly, if you were going to spend a lot of money, I don't think primaries are the way to go. I really don't. I know there's a problem. I know we have candidates who are not MAGA. The problem with DC is it's shown itself pretty effective at turning principled conservative candidates, or at least seemingly so, into people who will just vote against the will of the voters. And I really just don't think primaries are the way to go. What will happen is that the establishment Republicans will pick the candidate they like, dump all that money behind them. The person in the primary will most likely get crushed. They probably won't be able to get the Trump endorsement they need. And even if they get through, getting Republicans to form ranks on a bill is like herding cats. It's really just not going to happen because the establishment interests are just too strong in Washington, D.C. It's too easy for these candidates to get there. and craft their own perfect little bubble in which they can make all of their special interests happy, and the will of the voter in aggregate is not heard. It's just too easy. And it's going to happen to third party candidates just like it is to Republican candidates. And again, I think throwing these people into the mix is just going to add an array of chaos, probably make the Democrats super happy, probably going to make the Republican establishment run even more moderate candidates, because these people who are budget hawks are going to look awful conservative. And they're certainly, like I said, they're going to be the ones pushing grandma off the cliff. I think the optics are going to be bad and messy. But there is a uniparty, there is an establishment, it needs to be fixed somehow. You see, you can't get what you want unless we make a deal to get what we want. And it's happening again, right? Just today. Now everybody's talking about amnesty because word on the street is now that that bill has been signed, big business people are coming to Republicans, to the administration, to influencers and saying it's time to push amnesty. We need to get those farmers. We can't have those illegals go back. And I think they all need to go. Noam Chomsky had a really great quote. In the US, there is basically one party, the business party. It has two factions called Democrats and Republicans, which are somewhat different but carry out variations of the same policy. By and large, I'm opposed to all these policies, as is most of the population. That's exactly right. And guess what? The American party is just going to be a third business party. It's not going to work. But how do you change things? Elon Musk has $1 billion. How do you change things? You don't light it on fire, building a politically unviable national third party. You put it to work fixing Republicans. And people will say, oh, but we've tried a primary. No, you haven't. I think basically $0 has been spent fixing Republicans. You have a whole lot of think tanks who, in my opinion, are basically just vectors for corruption. You have very little turnover in the Republican organizations. I just want to show you something. I want to show you what you're up against if you're trying to fix the Republican Party. You have the Republican National Committee. This is the one everybody focuses on. This is the one that Ronna McDaniel was in charge of. I think we have Michael Whatley now, former North Carolina Republican head. He's been in there, I think, less than a year. And there are conflicting reports about whether he fired a meaningful amount of people or not. Central leadership, oversight, set party platform, fundraising, brand, messaging, and oversight. So important. 1 to 200 full-time employees. But apparently that organization has as many as 100,000 volunteers, poll watchers, lawyers for Trump, et cetera, et cetera. National Republican Congressional Committee, this is totally different, manages Republican strategy and funding for U.S. House races, 50 to 100 people. Again, several thousand volunteers during the election cycles. National Republican Senatorial Committee, parallel to the NRCC, focuses on U.S. Senate campaigns. Again, 50 to 100 people, thousands of volunteers, and millions, tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions of dollars each election cycle that these people control how it gets trickled out. Republican Governors Association, dozens of staff headquartered in Washington, D.C., supports Republican gubernatorial campaigns. It keeps going. Then you have state Republican parties, 50 chapters, and D.C., and the territories. Statewide candidate support, ballot access, voter outreach, blah, blah, blah. Varies staff size from handfuls in small states to 20 to 50 professionals in larger ones, probably hundreds across the country. Probably, again, another layer of thousands of volunteers. Then you have county and local level, county parties, local candidate support, voter registration drives, generally part-time staff, but many, many, many volunteers, incalculable. And then the precinct organizations, the grassroots backbone, organized by precinct captains based on voter rolls, fully volunteer led, tens of thousands of them. And then it keeps going. Then you have demographic outreach groups. Then you have think tanks. Then you have all these things. You have PACs, all these things affiliated with Republicans, Republican establishment. This is the infrastructure. And this is, quite frankly, something that I don't think Elon understands. I think that he runs his large organizations like startups very admirable. But these organizations matter. People are policy. And there's 2 points here. One point is that Elon, even if he had $1 billion, is not going to be able to snap his fingers and replicate even a fraction of this in a way that will be effective at creating meaningful change in the near term. The other thing I would point out is that, in my opinion, Elon Musk should go to Donald Trump and respectfully apologize and offer him a plan of how he could use $1 billion to reform all of this. The Republican Party, this is the problem. Nobody is trying to change these people. And across the board, I think most of these people have been there for a long time, like their role, have power, want to maintain their power, aren't super interested with MAGA ideals, probably more concerned in just getting their local candidates elected, and they will say whatever it takes to get that person over the finish line, even if they're wrong, even if they're espousing unpopular ideas, even if they're not budget hawks. That's the problem. And you have very little coordinated effort going to fix this right now. You have the precinct strategy, which has been there for a long time. I bet you it's been pretty effective at getting a significant number of MAGA volunteers into the very grassroots foundation of the national Republican structure. What is being done to make sure that the people who allocate money, the movers and shakers, these people that command tens, hundreds of thousands of volunteers, hundreds of millions of dollars, donor relationships, consultant and vendor relationships that have been going on for a very long time, very entrenched. How do you make those people have a spine, have principles, and stand for what Americans want? I came from large, complex organizations. I believe in systems thinking and design, and I don't think that people are going to be effective at reforming the Republican Party until they put a new infrastructure in place to drive change. And that money could be used to do this. Instead, it's just going to seek to blow up the Republican Party more. That's the problem. You can't upset the system. The Republicans suck. They're going to continue to suck unless they're forced to change. But you move that balance even a hair, and you're going to see an awful lot of disaster in this country. But if you want to talk about disasters, Democrats are not looking really good right now. There needs to be blood. Democrats voters tell them to get shot in Trump resistance push. And we are going to talk about this in our next live stream. So make sure you check it out on Rasmussen_poll on YouTube.
If you've learned something, please follow us at RasmussenReports.com, Rasmussen_poll at Twitter. Follow us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Mark_R_Mitchell at Twitter. And thanks for watching.